Welcome to Chapter 10, Supporting Documentation Requirements. This training is presented by the Oregon Department of Education Child Nutrition Programs, also known as ODE-CMP. In this training, we will cover the basics of supporting documentation, including what it is, required supporting documentation for grains, meat alternates, combination foods, and meal accommodations, and the available resources. After this training, we hope that you will understand what food items will require additional supporting documentation and know what resources are available for supporting documentation. What are supporting documentation anyway? These are documentation that show how food items served meet meal pattern requirements. It is only required for some food items, such as items with specific regulatory requirements, and items that are hard to tell if it meets nutritional quality or quantity requirements. All supporting documentation must be saved along with monthly menus. Required supporting documentation will vary based on the meal pattern component or type of food item. For the grains component, this includes whole grain rich foods and breakfast cereals. For the meat and meat alternate component, also known as MMA, this will include yogurt and tofu. For combination foods, you will need additional supporting documentation for both homemade and commercially purchased combination foods, which are also known as processed combination foods. Individual meal accommodations are also foods that require additional supporting documentation. This includes medical and non-medical requests, although the documentation requirement may be different. Whole grain rich foods require supporting documentation to show that the food item served meets whole grain rich requirements. The definition of whole grain rich is a grain product with grain content between 50 to 100% whole grain, and any remaining grains in the product are enriched. The main way to document the whole grain rich status is by saving the ingredient list. There are also some additional documentation that can be saved if the ingredient list is not available or does not appropriately document whole grain rich status. Other documents can be used to support whole grain rich status. This can include saving the front packaging for a food item along with a WIC whole grain foods list showing the same item on the list, saving a product label with a FDA standard of identity and is labeled as whole wheat on its packaging, or saving a product with a FDA-approved whole grain health claim on its packaging. For combination food items that can credit towards the grain component, supporting documentation can include product formulation statements, CN labels, or standardized recipes. Ingredient labels are easy to find for most products, which is why this is the predominant method of showing that your grain product meets whole grain rich requirements. If you are using the ingredient list to support your whole grain rich claim, you will need to check the first 3 grain ingredients to make sure it meets whole grain rich requirements. If the first grain ingredient is a whole grain, and the second and third grain ingredients, if there are any, are creditable grains, then the item will be whole grain rich. Looking at the ingredient label on the screen, you will want to check the first ingredient, the whole wheat flour is a whole grain, then move past the water to check the second grain ingredient, which is enriched wheat flour, which is a creditable grain, and then check the third grain ingredient, which is wheat bran and also a creditable grain. Since the first ingredient is a whole grain and the next 2 grain ingredients are creditable grains, this product is whole grain rich. Check out Chapter 9, Crediting Grains, for more information on whole grain rich crediting. If an ingredient label is not available, or if the ingredient label does not show whole grain rich status, sponsors can look for other potential supporting documentation. The WIC whole grain foods list is available from every state, and all whole grain foods listed on WIC will also meet whole grain rich requirements. In order to verify whole grain rich status using this method, sponsors must save the product packaging and the WIC list showing that the product purchased is the same item as the one on the WIC list. There's also a WIC breakfast cereal list. While all cereals on the list meet sugar limit requirements, not all of them meet whole grain rich requirements. Only the items with a purple W on the Oregon CACFP WIC cereal list will meet whole grain rich requirements. Like the whole grains food list, save the packaging and the food list to show that it meets the whole grain rich requirement. You can use any current WIC list, but if you are not using the Oregon list, you will need to check that it meets whole grain requirements first. This might not be obvious with all WIC lists. When saving your packaging, check that it matches with the item description on the WIC list. There are many varieties of cereal out there, and different formulations may have different ingredients. There are a few grain-based foods with a standard of identity. Foods with the FDA standard of identity must meet specific characteristics, ingredients, and proportions of ingredients, which is why items with specific whole wheat standards of identity can also credit as a whole grain rich food. This includes whole wheat, entire wheat, or graham breads, rolls, and buns. Supporting documentation that must be kept for this method include the packaging with the name of the item that matches the standard of identity exactly. Information on this is available on the flowchart for creditable and whole grain rich grains, which is linked in the description section below. While there are not as many items with FDA-approved whole grain health claims on the market lately, products with the exact claims, diets rich in whole grain foods and other plant foods, and low in total fat, saturated fats, and cholesterol may reduce the risk of heart disease and some cancers, or diets rich in whole grain foods and other plant foods and low in saturated fats and cholesterol may reduce the risk of heart disease, will meet whole grain rich requirements. To use this method to verify an item is whole grain rich, save the product packaging with the health claim and the name of the product. Finally, if you have a grain product that is also a combination food, there are some additional options for supporting documentation. Combination foods are items that include more than one meal component or are food items with both creditable and non-creditable ingredients. Homemade combination foods will require a standardized recipe and an ingredient list of the grain product in the recipe. Commercially purchased combination foods will require a child nutrition or CN label or a product formulation statement, also known as a PFS. Next, let's talk about breakfast cereals. For breakfast cereals, the nutrition facts label must be saved to support the menu. The nutrition facts label must show that the cereal meets sugar limit requirements of no more than 6 grams of added sugar per dry ounce. Breakfast cereals that are also whole grain rich must also save the ingredient list, or if it's a WIC cereal that is whole grain certified, include the WIC list and the packaging. Be careful with the WIC list though, since only half of the cereals on the WIC list must meet whole grain rich requirements. Remember to look for the purple W on the list, which indicates whole grain rich options. To check if your breakfast cereal meets sugar limit requirements, use the breakfast cereal sugar limit wallet card and compare against the total added sugar and the serving size on the nutrition facts label. Now let's move on to the meat and meat alternates. For yogurt, you will need to save the nutrition facts label, and the label must show that it meets the sugar limits of no more than 12 grams of added sugar per 6 ounces. You can use the CACFP sugar limit wallet card shown on the screen to check if the yogurt meets the sugar limit threshold. If serving tofu, make sure to keep the nutrition facts label showing that there is at least 5 grams of protein per 2.2 ounce weight, and the ingredient list showing the basic ingredients are whole soybean, one or more food grade coagulants, this will typically be a salt or acid and water only. If there are additional ingredients, the product may be considered a combination processed food. For tofu, the serving size may vary widely and list weights in grams or ounces. Sponsors may have to complete some calculations first to figure out if the tofu meets protein requirements. Keep in mind that 1 ounce is equal to approximately 28.3 grams if the serving size is only provided in grams. Taking a look at the nutrition facts label on the screen, to see if your tofu meets protein requirements, you will want to take the amount of protein and divide it by the serving size. Since the serving size is already in ounces here, you can multiply that by 2.2. There's 12 grams of protein, divide that by 3 ounces, so you get 4 grams of protein per ounce. Since you need to figure out how much protein that is per 2.2 ounces, you will multiply it by 2.2 to get 8.8 grams of protein per 2.2 ounces weight of tofu. This exceeds the 5 grams of protein per 2.2 ounces weight required and will meet protein requirements. We talked about combination foods a little while ago with grains. Homemade combination foods are combination foods that are prepared from multiple ingredients in a sponsor or vendor-operated kitchen. All homemade combination foods, whether with or without grains, must have a standardized recipe on file. To be complete, recipes must include information such as ingredients, portion sizes, and most importantly, a crediting statement showing the amount contribution to each meal component per serving. If the recipe includes items such as whole grain rich items, yogurt or tofu, or other commercially purchased combination foods, additional supporting documentation may be required for those items. The training, Creating Standardized Recipes, has more information on creating and documenting standardized recipes. Processed combination foods are also known as commercially prepared combination foods. These are items with more than one component or a mix of creditable and non-creditable ingredients which are purchased or ready-made. Since it's hard to tell the proportions of the ingredients in these items, sponsors must have at least one of the following on file: a child nutrition or CN label, or a product formulation statement, or a standard of identity with the product packaging. A child nutrition or CN label is part of the CN labeling program, which is offered by the USDA for manufacturers to provide information on meal component crediting for their products. This is used primarily for meat and poultry products. The CN label has a crediting statement that tells the consumer what the product's contribution is to the meal pattern per serving. CN labels will have a similar format to the sample shown on the screen. It includes a CN logo with the letter CN midway on each side of the box. It also includes a product identification number that can be verified through the CN label verification report, and it includes a contribution statement telling the purchasers how much an item will contribute to the different meal components. The contribution statement will be followed with a USDA authorization statement and date of approval. CN labels are valid for at least 5 years past the date of approval, although manufacturers can request reauthorization of the CN label past the 5 years. To check if the CN label is valid, you can see the valid until date on the CN label verification report. CN labels are mostly available through food service distributors who work with schools, although some may be found in warehouse-style stores. To document CN labels, sponsors must keep one of the following: the original CN label from the product carton, or a photocopy of the CN label shown attached to the original product carton, or a photograph of the CN label shown attached to the original product carton, or a CN label copied with a watermark displaying the product name and CN number provided by the vendor, and the bill of lading, which is also known as an invoice. If your commercially prepared combination food does not have a CN label, a product formulation statement is the next best thing. This is also known as a PFS, and it's another way for manufacturers to provide information on meal pattern contributions of their food products. This is also voluntary and does not go through an approval process with USDA. Sponsors can request the PFS directly from the manufacturer and must keep the documentation on file to show that meal component requirements, including portion sizes, are met. In order for a PFS to be valid, it must be on a company letterhead and include the product name and code number, the serving or portion size, the list of creditable ingredients with the contribution to the meal pattern, along with calculations showing how the crediting was determined, and a signature of a company representative and the signature date. Remember to check the information provided in the PFS carefully to ensure it is complete and that the information looks accurate. There are a few commercially prepared combination foods out there that have a standard of identity. These are products that are required to have certain ingredients in certain quantities in order to be called that name. For example, to be called turkey hash, a product must contain turkey and a certain amount of it. Standards of identity are mostly provided for meat and meat alternate items, although earlier in the training we discussed a few examples with whole grain rich products. ODE CMP has compiled a list of meat and meat alternate food items with standards of identity in a handout called Commercial Combination Foods with USDA Standards of Identity. The information in this list was taken from the Food Buying Guide and is available on the ODE CMP CACFP meal pattern page. If you don't have access to that list, you can also use the food item search tool in the Food Buying Guide and enter in your combination food product name and see if there is a listing for it. If there is, the product likely has a standard of identity. If your item has a standard of identity, you do not need a CN label or PFS to determine crediting. Instead, follow the information in the Food Buying Guide or the Standards of Identity list shown on the screen to determine minimum portion sizes. Make sure to save the packaging showing the name of the item and that the item matches exactly the name of the standard of identity. Meal accommodation requests are divided into medical requests and non-medical requests. For medical requests, sponsors must have a medical statement on file for meals to be reimbursed if the accommodations do not meet meal pattern requirements. The medical statement must be completed and signed by a licensed healthcare professional or registered dietitian. Doctor's notes are also allowed if it includes all the same required information that would be on a statement. For more information on medical accommodations, refer to the Meeting Meal Accommodations training. For non-medical requests, sponsors can keep a meal preference form on file if this is allowed within the sponsor's policy. Meal preference request forms are required if sponsors want to provide a nutritionally equivalent milk substitute and have the meals reimbursed. This form can be completed by a parent or guardian or adult participant. Meals that do not meet meal pattern are non-reimbursable. Refer to the Meeting Meal Accommodations training for more information on these accommodations. The supporting documentation that will be required are listed in this table. Whole grain-rich foods will require one of several different documentation, but the most common one is the ingredient list, which is readily available. Other available documentation can include WIC lists, PFSs, CN labels, and standardized recipes. You do not need every single document on this list, only one for each whole grain-rich item served. Breakfast cereals, yogurts, and tofu will all require a nutrition facts label to show they meet their sugar limit requirement for the breakfast cereal and yogurt, and to show they meet protein requirements for tofu. Homemade combination foods will need a standardized recipe, while commercially purchased combination foods will need one of the following: a CN label, PFS, standard of identity, or food buying guide crediting. Medical accommodations will require a medical statement for the participant if the accommodation will mean that the meal does not meet meal pattern. And nutritionally equivalent milk substitutes will need a meal preference form for the participant, a product packaging showing the item served, and if the product is not on the ODE CMP approved list for nutritionally equivalent milk substitutes, then a nutrition facts label or PFS will be required to show that the milk substitute does meet nutritional standards. You can refer to the Documenting Your CE/CFP menu handout for this information. Let's try a knowledge check. To show that an item meets whole grain-rich requirements, what would be an appropriate supporting documentation to keep on file? Is it ingredient list, product formulation statement, WIC whole grain foods list showing the item with product packaging, the product packaging with FDA health claim, or any of the above? The answer is any of the above. Note that the ingredient lists are the most common since it's found on packaging for almost all grains, and this will likely be the supporting documentation that will be available for most whole grain-rich items. Here are a few resources from ODE's CE/CFP meal pattern and menu planning page. Documenting Your CE/CFP menu handout was mentioned earlier and is shown on the screen to the left. It provides detailed information on how to document your menu, and the back page contains information on all the supporting documentation that must be kept on file. The product formulation statement and CN label at a glance handouts go over the background and requirements for those types of supporting documentation, and the Standards of Identity list provides a list of all meat and meat alternate products with a standard of identity for easy crediting. Sponsors who have meal accommodations for both medical and non-medical reasons can check out the ODE Meal Accommodations and Modifications page. In this training, we have covered what supporting documentation is, the required supporting documentation for grains, meat and meat alternates, combination foods, and meal accommodations. We have also gone over a few resources on supporting documentation. ODE supports equity and excellence for every learner. This institution is an equal opportunity provider. Thank you for taking this training.